What's up, guys? Zomboid Man here. Welcome to the third part of my Over the River and Dirkerdam series. Now, if you caught my previous video, you know that we left off in Dirkerdam after the raid of St. Peregrine Hospital. There I had secured enough ammonia to craft more vaccines, and I cured myself from the bite I had gotten on the cursed bridge between Over the River and West Point. Now that I was blissfully free of infection, a world of possibilities were open to me. First things first, though, I was tired of getting bitten all the time, so I decided to finally max out my tailoring. That should help, right? And because that storm horde had smashed my base and Over the River, I needed to fix things up there. And not to foreshadow things too heavily, but let's just say those base defenses would come in handy once again down the road. But anyways, my plan for this point in the playthrough was to do something I don't usually do, which was to go out of my way to build a base from scratch. A kind of stop and smell the roses period of rest and relaxation after everything I had been through recently. So I headed back to the Louisville Bridge, which I decided would be the location of my new base, because I liked the idea of building a base on the bridge and being a troll like that. But before I really got to work on the construction, I'd spend about a week asserting my dominance over the local population and letting those unruly Louisville residents know there was a new sheriff in town.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarred. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me when I'm falling. Cover up my scars, break the handlebars. Crashing in my car, wake up in a bar. I'll be a superstar, just on my avatar. This world is so bizarre, empty out the reservoir. Yeah, I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get on safe. So I'm taking 6 shots, all straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me? I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get on safe. I'm taking 6 shots, all straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me? Sometimes you need to let loose, grab juice, get cruise, tattoos, taboos, get screwed. Loosen up, buttercup, all those hate comments will never make you feel enough. We're all adequate graduates, hearts full of calluses, but we know calculus. Damn, ain't that fabulous? Can't wait to apply all those mathematicus. But we can't get a job that pays us enough. I'm about to pop off. Fuck you, you're lost. We all know that we never really want a boss. So I'ma do what I want to, something I can't undo. Yeah, I'ma do what I want to, something I can't undo. I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get on safe. So I'm taking 6 shots, all straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me? I'm taking 6 shots, yeah, straight to the face. And I wanna get lost, I'm sick of this place. Don't know how to stop when I'm feeling this way. So I'm taking 6 shots till I'm feeling okay. I think I'm going crazy, don't think I'll get on safe. I'm taking 6 shots, now straight to the face. I'm taking 6 shots, are you coming with me?
Now, the idea for the bridge was to build around the bus, which would serve as the nexus and center of the base, especially during the construction, and to close off the bridge to traffic. No one gets through without my say-so. Eventually, I wanted to have a space where I could work on my vehicles, a place to fish and farm, a kitchen and a bedroom, and maybe a few other surprises. But I'd need a lot of material, especially metal, and I would need a lot of furniture and various other things I could take from the residents of Louisville, who were none too eager to let me have their prized possessions, to say the least. It was on the 3rd of April that I made my first significant construction on the bridge as I put down a section of fence. Ooh, exciting. Anyways, this was a long process, so we're gonna take it day by day. On the 4th, I got a garage door up, and then I went to work on getting the gas station up and running. Yeah, I would need the gas, but more importantly, I would need to refill my propane tanks, as the base would require a lot of metalworking, and that, in turn, would require a lot of propane. So I went down to the quarantine zone where I knew I could find a generator, which I did, but I was also lucky enough to find a fuel trailer, which would become like my own mobile gas station. Nice. I finished enclosing what would become the garage with wire fencing. Then I decided to take an AK down to the industrial park for a change of pace. Now I had been to the industrial park before and I kind of remembered what was there, like the dog food plant. And I'm not ashamed to say that yes, I've eaten dog food before when food was scarce and I was struggling to survive. And if you want to eat dog food too, remember this location. There's plenty here, guys. Anyway, I wanted to refresh my memory of what was there and to look out for any materials, furniture, or tools that I might need for the base. The next morning, I set out in my yard with my breakfast while I thought about what I wanted to do with the construction, visualizing the various aspects of the base and what I would need to do to build them. Honestly, the worst part about building your own base in Project Zomboid might be the inevitable instances of putting something down and then not liking it, and then tearing it down and redoing it. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what I was going to do beforehand to minimize that. Anyways, later that day I went back down to the military checkpoint so I could take some of their barricades, floodlights, crates, and various other things, as well as some metal I'd salvaged from wrecked vehicles. While I was down there, I was also able to snag a trailer with plenty of space that would come in handy for storing all the things I'd acquire over the course of the project. It's always nice to have something you can just dump shit into without worrying about sorting it until later. On the 7th, the weather decided to rain, so I put on my poncho before putting up some metal stairs. I was going for an industrial aesthetic for the bridge base, and I would be extensively using the added construction options from Jay's vanilla building expansion, a mod I would highly recommend to anyone looking for a light and not overwhelming expansion of building options. Anyways, after the stairs, I started fencing in a section of the yard that I would later use for the all-important activity of fishing. Fishing's a pretty solid way to keep your weight up in Project Zomboid. On the 8th, I decided to visit the nearby neighborhood, to take some hedges from the properties there because I thought they would look good in my yard. Then on the 10th, I had a group of protesters show up to halt the construction. the second floor. For the 11th, I started the day with a nice pot of wild egg and bean soup, which I kept in a rucksack because I was too cheap to install a refrigerator. I didn't want that extra drain on my generator. I like looking at my generator and seeing it's going to last for months. After breakfast, I finished the flooring on the second story, and I gotta say, those red coveralls were looking pretty damn good on me. Later on that day, I made another of my many trips to the gas station to restock on propane, which was necessary to smelt the many metal pipes and bars that I needed. To be honest, I was running through pipe faster than a celebrity who hadn't seen a decent roll in years. Anyways, on the 12th, I made another trip to the industrial park. And there I did some furniture shopping at the line-by-line design office. They were simply giving stuff away. Back at base, I was in the middle of the typical Zomboid, where do I put this piece of furniture dance when another protest rally decided to show up on my front door. It was a little late for guests, but I'm nothing if not a hospitable host. I made some more progress on the balcony before deciding to relax for the evening by disassembling a junker for parts. On the 15th, I began enclosing the kitchen to the west end of the bridge and had a warm bowl of beans for dinner. Then I smelt some more pipe before laying the barricades on the west end. After that, I spent the rest of the night indoors reading about fishing in anticipation of making use of my fishing deck the following day. For the 17th, I made yet another trip to the gas station, which was once again overrun with hooligans who had unfortunately decided to contest my claim to the territory. Oh well. Was broken up, I happened to get scared to death once I actually began using the pump. Tell me that standing at the gas pump isn't one of the scariest situations in Project Zomboid. Anyways, after finishing up there, I spent some time clearing wrecks from the highway, as I wanted to clear a path to the cemetery. I needed something that they had there for the base, but we'll get into that later. the 18th, I began laying the roof above the kitchen, which would double as a little place to grow some crops. And later that day, I put some traps out, but I never seemed to catch anything out here. In the next couple of days, I didn't get too much done really, but I did loot some nearby properties for more furniture and canned goods and laid the flooring for the kitchen. At this point, I was pretty happy with how the base was shaping up. In the early hours of the 22nd, I finally began putting up the walls for the bedroom on the second floor. I wasted a lot of time agonizing about how big to make it before finally just saying, fuck it. Later that day, I looted the nearby neighborhood once again, this time picking up some rugs and windows for the bedroom. And then I wound down the evening with some recreational fishing. On the 23rd, I got some more of the bedroom done before a fresh round of protests temporarily halted the construction. On the 24th, I finally decided to quit pussyfooting around about the dimensions of the bedroom and put the rest of the walls up, and later, the roof. Then I began furnishing the inside. With all these home renovations, I was really working up an appetite. On the 25th, I went back to the apartment complex to borrow even more furniture, and I was surprised with a nice care package of fishing and farming supplies. Nice. Afterward, I continued furnishing the bedroom before spending my first night in it. On the 26th, I made the trip out to the cemetery, but we'll just skip to the important part, getting my pile of gold. Also, I took a couple of headstones for the homies, of course. Now, if you've never found a pile of gold in Project Zomboid, remember this location, and you too can be the proud owner of a pile of gold. At this point, I was nearly finished with the base. I had a garden, a bedroom, and pretty much everything else I wanted or needed. The last thing to do was a little landscaping. So I got started on that before deciding to explore a nearby neighborhood for a much-needed change of pace. And a change of pace it was. May, I decided I would finally finish those tedious lawn messages I had begun before my week-long change of pace, and I brought the base project to a close. And now that I was finished with the base, it was time to leave, obviously. Because I have already previously conquered Louisville, I wasn't particularly interested in doing that again. So instead, I decided to head south and see what kind of trouble I might get into. First things first, though, I had to stop by the quarantine zone to stock up for the road. By the 8th, I made it as far as an industrial warehouse just south of Louisville. A lot of these days were simply spent removing the wrecks blocking the road, hot wiring extra vehicles, and of course, shooting Zeds. I also happened to find this cool rig though, complete with a trailer and attached shipping container. And I really wanted to take it, but I just didn't have a use for it then. So that'd have to wait until a later date. Anyways, as I continued down the road, let's just say things would get a little hot and spicy for a while. Despite all the slaughter that had taken place, it appeared to me that in the wee hours of the 12th, a storm horde was gathering and that the road north might be blocked. So I decided to kill time looting corpses and scouting the area, while I waited for the inevitable storm horde to barrel down on me. Now, because I had already killed so many, I thought that I would probably be able to stand my ground on the road. But, as it turned out, standing my ground on the road was not really such a great idea. They were coming from every direction and would be for hours. If I got cut off from my car, out here in no man's land with no safe quarter anywhere nearby, I was probably dead man. So I decided to do the only thing I really could do. I took the Humvee and ran. Along the way, I learned an interesting aspect of the calm before the storm mod that I hadn't realized before. That yes, you can evade a local storm horde by running away, but wherever you go, those zomboids in those new areas will be called down onto your position. So in fact, you can't outrun the storm, it follows you. Anyways, I wound up running to the nearest safe spot I could think of, which was my over-the-river base. And once again, a respectably sized respawn army descended upon me there. But in the end, my defenses held up, and I was able to ward them off. I have to say though, the calm before the storm really makes things interesting. The fact that I got chased halfway around the county and still had to make a stand just to survive that night was pretty cool. It's that kind of thing that makes the Zomboid experience so much more alive and dynamic than the pure vanilla experience. Anyways, when it was all said and done, I spent the night there and over the river, refreshing my guns and ammo and rebuilding my fences again, before heading off back to the bridge base. What to do now was a little bit of a question. I could head south again, but while I was here, I decided I might as well explore the quarantine zone some more, and search for any secrets I might find relating to the Secret Z mod. But aside from finding this cool power station that some survivor type Zeds had apparently tried to survive at, and these cool charred zombies thanks to the authentic Z mod, it was business as usual, and I returned to the bridge base the following day. I began to doubt that there were any secrets I was missing in the quarantine zone, and all the effort of moving wrecks and knocking down barriers really made the quarantine zone exploration rather tedious. Too tedious, really, for me to want to continue. So then I decided I would just continue working down the highway. I was having fun blowing up the massive hordes there with the RPG, and I wanted to do some more of that. I was also hoping that as I made my way south, I might find a Secret Z checkpoint somewhere. But first, since I was going to be going on a road trip, I decided I would loot houses until I found a sleeping bag. And I have to say that the duplexes near my base were always juiced with loot. Plenty of canned food and pretty much anything else I ever needed, including those sleeping bags. There was even another KI-5 Pontiac sport car there, so I brought that back with me, of course. Anyway, the next day I got back on the road and continued blowing shit up. The strategy of noisemaker boombox and explosives was working quite well. I felt like I was making the world a safer place, at least for myself. Sleeping in some pretty weird locations. One of the better spots though was this apartment above a gas station, since it had an actual bed. The bed quality thing really makes a difference in your character's sleep needs and how long you can be awake before getting tired. Having an actual bed to sleep in is an important thing in Project Zomboid. My favorite place to sleep along the road, however, was the rooftop of a rest station, where I had to build a ladder to get up and to use my sleeping bag to pass the night. This is a pretty safe way to sleep, by the way. Just be careful when you're getting down. On the 19th, I found myself busy looting a fat pile of corpses when I found this jester's cap and decided to put it on. I kinda liked it, if I'm being honest. Anyways, for the 20th, I continued with more killing and blowing shit up. The Zeds were practically endless along this stretch of road, and at some point in all this mayhem, I crossed the 80,000 kill mark. First, I pushed further down the road, and the first interesting thing to happen was that the road and the map were misaligned. So I figured I was entering into some modded territory. The area turned out to be the West Point expansion, which I had forgotten was in my mod list. And because I had never seen the area before, I was kind of excited to see something new. So I spent the rest of that day making some inroads into the area before passing the night in another nearby gas station. To say, as excited as I was to explore the West Point expansion, I wasn't quite prepared for how real things would get out there. But first things first, I had to find my way in. Instead of dealing with all the wrecks on the bridge, I decided to use the railroad track instead, because it was free of congestion. And then I cut down all the trees blocking the path to the main road. And it was a good thing that I did, because if I hadn't, probably would have been screwed later on when the shit would really hit the fan. Anyway, I spent that first day doing the usual noise plus heavy weaponry thing, pulling out all the Zeds from their little hidey holes and clearing the area. So I checked the Pharma-Hug for any vaccine material that they might have. And afterward, I spent the night in the toilet of the pile of crepe. The next day, I explored the strip mall, visiting the different stores and taking stock of what they had, before I decided on a somewhat questionable location as a future base. I have to say that I was kind of liking the vibe of the West Point expansion though. As early as my second day there, I was already thinking about the next storm horde and trying to prepare before they came down. So I collected the wood from those trees I had chopped down and I started putting up some defenses. Didn't realize it then, but this base location would be pretty bad from a defensive standpoint, even though I liked how central it was from an exploration standpoint. The most notable thing for the 25th of May was that I put up a mannequin with the spiky Walking Dead getup in my driveway. And on the 26th, I put up a real bed in my office, so I could stop sleeping on the floor like a derelict husband who had been kicked out of the house. Then I continued putting up more base defenses. I was trying to make a little combat square in the neighboring lot, where I imagined I could draw the Zeds and slow them down if they came in numbers like I knew they would. But most of my defenses here would be rendered almost useless, as you'll see. On the 27th, I found a bed I liked better in the neighboring apartments, so I switched that out. It fit the survivalist aesthetic better in my opinion. On the 28th, I found a cooking VHS and watched that in the reception area of the new base. Then I found this cool fuel truck which actually had fuel in it, something that almost never happens. It It was later that night while I was looting an apartment that I got the news. The storm horde was on its way. Now the truth is, I kinda wasn't expecting this storm horde to be all that bad. I had killed a lot of zombies in the area already, especially when I first entered the town. And then over that week I had killed quite a few more in the surrounding area around my base. So I thought things were decently cleared out around here. But that would turn out not to be the case. Almost from the first second that I saw the horde descending on me, I began to see that making a stand here would not be possible. First, they were coming from the north, which I hadn't expected, because there wasn't much that way, only a mall, which I had already cleared, and then there were only woods and river beyond that. But there were plenty of Zeds in those woods who had apparently decided to sit things out when I first rolled into town. Seeing that, I knew immediately that my little combat square was out of the question. It was positioned more for Zeds that would be coming from the west or the south, but not the north. The only thing to do now really was to take the Humvee and reposition. Find somewhere with a more auspicious outlook from which to fight. The main thing was that I needed a spot where I could fight them without getting swamped. That they were coming from every direction in loose, endless waves. There was nowhere I could gain footing against them. On the plus side of things, I did manage to avoid getting cut off from the Humvee, which was a small victory in itself. But as I fled around the town, it became increasingly clear that I wasn't going to be able to hold out against them. There were no good spots to hold my ground at all. Eventually, I was totally overwhelmed and completely pushed out of town. But when one door closes, another door opens. The bottleneck that was the train track happened to be the perfect spot for a fight. It was a place where I could deploy the minigun and the grenade launcher, as well as small arms to great effect. I didn't have to worry too much about Zeds pushing me from behind there either. But even with the bottleneck and my powerful weapons, it wasn't enough to hold back the tide, and I was eventually pushed even further out of town. Yet the fight raged on in the streets outside of West Point until fully 3 a.m. in the morning, when finally, mercifully, the horde seemed to have stopped following me. Apparently, they were contented that I was no longer a resident of West Point. In that moment, I was pretty exhausted and it was late and dark and I needed a place to sleep. So I slid the Humvee next to a wreck and got what sleep I could before the sun came up. As you might imagine, I was kind of pissed about this whole getting ran out of town thing. So when I woke up the next day, it was on. After another full day and night of fighting, the territory was once again in my possession. My place, however, was trashed. All the barricades and doors I had put up were broken down. My crops were trampled, and broken glass was everywhere. It was a mess, to say the least. So I did what any sane, emotionally mature, and responsible human being would do. I went to the gun store, of course. Now the selection there wasn't quite insane, but they did have 45, 9mm, and 12 gauge. So I was able to get a very necessary refresh of my ammo. With everything that had happened, I was running a little low. After that, I went back to the base and placed some guns on my desk, as is tradition, and then I rummaged the pockets of my fallen enemies. I will have to say that while I was here in West Point, by simply looting the massive piles of corpses I would create, I was able to build up a decent supply of ammo from loose rounds and boxes in their pockets, and that I also happened to do pretty well with ammonia and sulfuric acid, both from the Zeds themselves, but also from the locations that I looted. Much better than I had done in the other towns I'd been to anyway. On the 31st, I continued to reclaim the town, and in the process I hit sneaking and long blade level 5, which was nice, because at this point, almost a year in, level ups were pretty few and far in between. And also that day, I was surprised to learn that the pipe with scissors was a more decent weapon than I remembered. But most importantly of all things that happened that day, I located some new hat drip, and finally replaced the jester's cap. The day following those momentous occasions, I largely spent killing even more leftovers from the storm horde. Apparently a large contingent of them had gotten lost in the construction site, and I spent the day giving them directions to hell before going over the carpets of the nearby apartments with a fine-tooth comb in search of any Parmesan cheese that a president's son may have left there. On the 2nd of what was now June, I explored the town further, finding the police station, the church, and the fire department. Unfortunately, the police department was pretty light on gun loot, but that didn't matter all too much because a day later I found a loaded secret stash in the back office of a bar. Now that my ammo situation was actually pretty good, I guess I had time to start rebuilding my defenses before the next storm horde would appear and tear them down all over again. And because that secret stash had been so plentiful, I was now the proud owner of 2 fully loaded miniguns, both the 308 and the 5.56 variants. And let's just say they would come in handy down the road. In fact, down the road was like the next day when that storm horde decided to come through. Unfortunately, I messed up the recording though and didn't get the footage. But suffice it to say, the double minigun action allowed me to hold my ground this time, and I actually wasn't chased out of town for once. I spent the next several days after that exploring the town even more. And I finally made a drip change that I was kind of happy about. I had found some lightweight clothing that I patched with leather strips. It was both lighter and cooler for the summer months, which allowed me to carry more and overheat less, and at the same time maintained a high degree of protection from bites. Which, if we're being honest, I definitely needed. I'm not trying to get bitten for a 5th time here. Anyway, on the 15th, I mapped the eastern edges of the West Point expansion, and on the 17th, I notched another skill up in both mechanics and farming. Then I went on a massive killing spree for 2 whole days, only to have an even more unexpectedly massive storm horde roll through and push me to the absolute brink of extinction. This is what that 3-day span of straight fighting looked like. able to get off that early RPG, things probably would have gone a lot better. And because there were so many zombies, the game started to lag, which contributed to my inability to get into my vehicles. And funnily enough, I was ran out of town again. Because I was cut off from the Humvee and the base, a lot of my lifelines like ammo, food, water, and mobility were out of reach. The fight truly became a sink-or-swim moment for the playthrough. Things were looking pretty bleak there for a while. But once I was able to get back to the Humvee and the base, it was only a matter of time for me to finish off the Zeds. Nonetheless, that was a close one. In the end, I was able to scrounge bullets and weapons, food and vitamins from the fallen Zeds, and fight my way back into town, reclaiming it by the end of the night on the 19th. Side note, it was right after all of this happened that the Tri-Honesty Cedar Hill drama exploded. and the save was actually bricked for a couple of days. I was able to fix my save in the end, but it was pretty scary to get this far into a playthrough and then not be able to load my game until I figured out what had happened. Anyways, after finally greasing that horde and winning back West Point, I spent the 20th once again rebuilding my base, and in the evening I took comfort in reading one of the few remaining skill books I had left to read. At this point in the playthrough, a new goal was beginning to take shape in my mind. I wanted to cut a path across West Point to the over the river bridge, so that I could easily cross between the two towns and make a return trip to the Dirkerdam lab and make the cure. I happened to be sitting on a lot of vaccine material, as I had been lucky in West Point with them so far, which justified returning to the lab for another round of vaccine upgrade attempts. So I'd spend most of the next week working my way that direction. On the 21st, I was somehow embroiled in another massive bout of all-day-long combat, but we'll keep it pretty short because we've had quite enough of that lately. On the 22nd, I made it as far as the Vanilla police station. This one wasn't exactly loaded either, but they had some 9mm, and they had some 12 gauge too, so I was mildly happy with it. For the 23rd, I decided to take a detour and visit a hospital that was part of the West Point expansion and see if they had any ammonia. Because of all the storm hordes, things were pretty quiet at the hospital itself. I looted it largely uncontested. Ultimately, I came away with a little bit of ammo and one bottle of ammonia. For the 24th, I spent the day using the boombox in combination with the minigun to quickly clear the road of Zeds. And it was working pretty well, I have to say. More of the same, and then on the 26th I took out a .357 revolver for a little variety. On the 27th I was doing some base chores and looting dead corpses when the military decided to drop me a care package. How nice of them. Just in time for me to have already conquered West Point. It was later that night that I'd finally tune into the automated broadcast system and learn that there was a fault emanating from the Muldrow station. The 28th I spent looting a used storage in the expansion area, netting some more gun loot and another generator in the process. By the 29th, I finally made it all the way across to the over the river bridge. The only problem was, to make use of it, I would have to go by foot. And realistically, I wouldn't be able to transport all of the sulfuric acid I would need to take back with me to Dirkerdam. Those things are actually pretty heavy. I briefly considered making my own bridge wide enough to drive a car across, but that would be a massive project and take forever. In the end, I needed to go by my Louisville base anyways, because I had even more vaccine material there. So ultimately, I would have to go the long way around after all. Oh well. Anyways, that night I brought home this cool rally car from the Motorious Zone mod, and essentially killed time for the next few days waiting for a storm horde that never came. I figured that if they came for me here now, it would probably be smaller and easier to manage, because I had killed at least 10,000 zomboids in the area over the last 2 weeks. so I might as well wait to head back to Dirkerdam. But like I said, they never came, and the week passed in random activities like figuring out how to fix the broken automated broadcast system and taking the rally car to a video store down the road. Eventually, though, I got impatient and set off for Dirkerdam on the 3rd of July, just a couple of days before my 1-year anniversary of survival. And because I had messed up my OBS settings once again, there happens to be a 6-day gap in the footage, so I'll just have to tell you what happened. Now, this point in the journey was supposed to be the end of the video. I was going to go back to Dirkerdam with all my 14 bottles of ammonia and all my tubs of sulfuric acid, and I was going to finally craft the cure. The Tier 4 vaccine that has a 100% cure rate. All for my 1-year anniversary of surviving. I was going to. And, well, I did go back for my 1-year anniversary of surviving. Yeah, go me. And I did bring all my 14 bottles of ammonia and all that other shit. And I started trying to upgrade vaccines. I even had some level 3 vaccines waiting for me there from the last time. And, well, it didn't work. I didn't successfully craft the cure, even after all of that. My disappointment, as you can imagine, was immense. This was the most anticlimactic end to a year of post-apocalyptic survival I could imagine. I had killed over 100,000 zombies. I had conquered Dirkerdam and over the river. I even built an awesome base on a bridge. I even saw the West Point expansion that I never knew was there. I was feeling good too because I had such a string of good luck finding all those vaccine materials. I had never before had 14 bottles of ammonia in my possession. Like I said, it's rare. Even the St. Peregrine's Siege only netted me 4 bottles. But now I had 14. But still, it didn't matter. No Tier 4 vaccine for me. In the end, I left myself 3 level 3 vaccines to guard against my next bite. Because, let's be real, I was probably gonna get bitten again, and I didn't have another St. Peregrine's hospital to raid. Anyways, after that couple of days there in Dirkerdam and that massive disappointment, I returned to West Point. Now that, coupled with the fact that I had messed up the recording, I decided not to end the video there. I decided instead to pursue my next objectives, which were twofold. 1, to repair the malfunctioning emergency broadcast system, an aspect of the Save Our Station mod, a quest of sorts which I had never completed before in any playthrough. And 2, to visit the museum, a map mod that I always wanted to see. As it turned out though, getting to Muldrow was going to be a significant and difficult project, so I opted for the museum instead. It wasn't until I was actually inside the museum that I realized my recording was messed up. So we'll skip the part where I killed a bunch of zomboids before gaining entry to the museum, and instead we'll just jump right into a quick tour. And I gotta say, the museum was pretty cool. Now these assets don't exactly match the Zomboid aesthetic, but still, it was something that added a bit of life to the Zomboid world and was definitely cool to see. Now it took me 2 or 3 days to actually clear the museum, but on the last day I found a hidden door behind a bookcase. And this is what I found at the end of the passageway. That's right, the Holy Grail. I think I'll take this with me. Anyways, this was going to be the end of the video. Except, as I left the museum and considered my next moves, I decided on a whim to head down the undiscovered road east, just to see if there was anything over there. And pretty quickly I came upon a military checkpoint. Now I was fairly certain that this wasn't a part of the vanilla map, so I figured it must be part of the Secret Z mod, which is also a mod I've never completed and also kind of gives you a quest. So I decided to spend the night there and search the area in the morning. After taking stock of the guns and ammo on location, I found it. I found a clue to the mystery, the damaged map. This is what that looked like. Immediately I suspected this was a neighborhood in Louisville. I did several double takes between the photograph and the game map just to be certain. And now I'm heading back to Louisville with a renewed sense of purpose. All that searching in the quarantine zone that I had done before had not uncovered any secrets. But I had been going in the right direction, only I didn't know it at the time. This torn map, however, was the missing link. And with that cliffhanger, now I can end the video. So, thanks for watching. Zomboid Man out. I'll catch you in the next one and all that. Peace.